probably where the inspiration came from for the name.
Dude, a Monte Cristo done right.
That's what Brett did all throughout Spain. He got drunk and shaved his face while I was puking in a toilet.
It's true. It's absolutely true.
So we're like, this bottle of Jack's
Judge
gotta
like,
go.
And I was like, not we, you. It was definitely not. There was no consensus where I'm like, man, this is really difficult
You
for
were
John.
supposed to share it with me. I wasn't supposed to drink the majority of it.
Okay, are we ready? Are we good?
Yes.
As
good as we're gonna get, I guess.
Clink, clank, clink, clink,
Clink, clank. Clink, clink, clink. Ooh, wow, right up there. All sensual like. You can see my face in the glass even.
It's got some dark tones. I like it. Hello and welcome to Strange Happy Hour. I am one of your hosts, Brent the Jesterhead Metcalf, along to my left.
The dispatcher, Mark Plover.
And on my right.
Handsome John Pettit.
And of course, we have come to you, as we do each and every week, to discuss with you the nerdy video game news and the really cool tech news that's happened this week. Now, hold on, tech news happening? We're just going to put that out there. But of course, we don't have time to discuss with you every single little bit of news that comes out. We do not have enough time to discuss everything that happened during the Ubisoft Forward, is that what it was called, event? I don't know, it was very awkwardly named. But
it
it
was
cool.
not. It was perfectly named, and you're just a sort.
Yep, you're right. That's it. Ubisoft Forward. We also don't have time to discuss what happened during the Stadia Connect that nobody knew was happening today. Nor do we have time to go over the details of the Lego buildable NES that plays, quote unquote, Mario. However, we do have time to talk about what we like to call on this very show each and every week as we discuss amongst ourselves the group of individuals that I will continue to talk about until I run out of breath.
The important
Since you wanted to jump the gun there, Mr. Dispatcher, why don't you take the first topic? Because it's so important that we have to hurry up and get to it right now.
Apparently. I don't know. You're the one putting the importance on it here, but I mean, it is kind of important to know, I guess, that Apple's paying $1.5 billion this week, or they're supposed to pay $1.5 billion.
Were they ransomed by Dr. Evil?
No, they were ransomed by the public that they decided to screw over.
Okay. Even better.
So they had to give up their prostitute fund. That's sad.
So they were ransomed by Dr. Evil.
Trust me, their prostitute fund is a lot bigger than you think.
Shit.
No.
Mark will end up dead next week. We're like, what happened? He knew about the prostitute fund. Calm down.
Oh, man, that's a shame. I just became an owner of Apple products, too.
They don't want you to know the truth.
Oh, you got to watch, huh?
I did.
Work out for you?
Yeah. But what's not working out for Apple is having to pay $500 million in the loss of a class action lawsuit. $500 million. So it was the initial thing that had come out where, I guess the reports that have come out multiple times about, Apple slowing down their products intentionally regarding, trying to, I guess, push people to purchase new products because that's always been their pitch, is like, oh, well, yeah, we know your iPhone's running slow, but we always have this one if you want to buy it, if you go walk into the Genius Bar and ask for support on it. So at first, there was no actual hoax on this. They're reasonable claims. They're claims anyway of like the batteries degrade. We have to physically slow the devices down. Every device does this. Yes, cool. That was fine. Secondary, on the other hand, they got caught red-handed. They actually were doing it greater than the specifications that they actually needed.
They're not the first
batteries.
company to push purposeful obsolescence on their product.
They're not. The difference is that they did it in a much more shifty way. But the interesting or the not so interesting part about this for the majority of people who were affected by this and can actually claim their money for the class action lawsuit is you only get $25.
Oh, thank God.
$500 million total that Apple has to pay out for this. But
this is why I don't like class action lawsuits.
Based on the number of devices that were affected, the actual payout per individual is only $25. So
now you have to accept the class action lawsuit, which also agreed to not sue them anymore or anything else involving this. You can go after them individually if you want to. It's just not going to be worth your money or time.
I think don't you get named in the end of the lawsuit too? Don't you? I forget how.
If you sign for the class action, yeah, you are one of the defendants.
Right,
so therefore, your name is now a part of that.
Right. Yeah. So your name, your information starts to become part of that too. But we'll see how many people actually start to go with this, and how many people Apple actually has to pay for this. So
yeah.
Honestly, $500 million is a drop in the bucket compared to what they make. It's the same thing that pharmaceutical companies do, and they're like, "Well, we'll get sued for $130 million, but we're going to make $1.3 billion, so just go ahead and push it out."
Wasn't if I remember right, Apple was the first company to actually be hailed as the first trillion-dollar company.
Company. Yep.
They crossed a $1 trillion market cap based on physical assets owned.
I believe it. I think what makes me laugh the hardest about this entire thing is that Samsung gets double what the people who are screwed get.
Yeah. So,
like Samsung's literally getting paid because Apple signed a contract saying we'll buy this many screens and they didn't. Mm-hmm. Whereas the people are being tricked into purchasing more products from them and they get less money.
Yep. Basically, that's generally how society works. Of course, whatever. No, so Apple has a contract. So this is the other $1 billion of it. Of course, is that Apple has a contract with Samsung to purchase OLED displays. For those who don't know, OLEDs are the nice, crisp, clean displays that are available on all the iPhones that do true blacks and have wonderful HDR capabilities and are great on battery life, which is why Apple buys so many of them. The problem is they apparently didn't buy enough. And a stipulation of the contract is that Apple has to help Samsung recoup the cost of what Samsung wants to make, I guess, in a certain profit margin. So because
what a baller contract.
So because Apple didn't buy enough, now $1 billion is the roundup. It's closer to the quote here is that it's closer to $950 million, but still, it is $950 million that Apple has to pay Samsung because they didn't buy enough of their OLED displays, which the resolution to this anyway that most people are talking about is that instead of them taking the fine on the contract, what they're probably going to do is just purchase enough product from Samsung and make a side agreement, like an addendum to the contract. Basically, it says, look, we'll buy enough products from you to basically null out what we owe for the fine, and we'll just call it at that.
But again,
I wonder if they'll be able to make that many and be like, we're just going to go ahead and ask for 500.
Well, so I think Samsung was actually poised to do that, and that's kind of the point. Is like $1 billion is probably what they're trying to recoup in, or contractually, they're trying to recoup in lost revenue or lost profit from Apple's purchases. And the problem is, if they're not purchasing enough, then what's the point in Samsung doing a massive contract deal with them? To make this happen.
Well, not only that, but the amount of money they put into making this product and factories and expectations were not met.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, and that's why Apple outsources this to Samsung. Samsung already has the manufacturing processes down. It's cheaper for them to just go to somebody who already has this in place rather than them to try to build this. But of course, they're building their own processors and upgrading MacBooks soon and all that stuff because the world just totally makes sense between all of that. They want to spend money in one place but not the other. But that's beside the point. No, so it's kind of it's a weird spot to see Apple in where they're going to have to pay a contractual fine, which again, this isn't a legal fine. This is no way a court ordered legal fine. Technically, it's a contractual obligation that Apple put themselves in with Samsung for a certain purchase of product. I mean, like if they purchase the OLED displays. For Apple, that probably works out anyway. They're probably just going to use it in more products that they sell or other things down the line anyway. It just gives them a little bit of coasting room. For Samsung, they don't care. They're still getting their contract, fulfilled one way or the other. They're still getting their money on the back end or the front end, one or the other.
But say in their heads, they were getting rid of that many OLEDs anyway. So the fact that they're just getting the money and they're getting rid of them, cool.
I mean, when you're a company as big as Samsung and you're probably providing OLEDs to a good number of companies that are all looking for them, not to mention your own products that are also using them, you probably have a mass supply of hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of these things just sort of ready to go or constantly churning out. So. When Apple comes along and says, we want to purchase $600 or $700 million worth of these OLED displays, there you go.
Dunsky.
Yep.
There you go. There's a big truck showing up. There's a couple big trucks showing up next week if you want them. It's really not a big deal. But no, it's a weird spot. Two things that happened seemingly within the same week are now putting Apple in pretty deep here, which again is a drop in the bucket for them.
Yeah, but for them, not so much. For us, it's catastrophic. That's like country level GDP going away.
Yeah,
there's
here we go. As of Q1 2019, so this is a full year ago, Apple had $245 billion cash on hand.
Jesus.
They could be their own bank. Wait, they are now.
$billion. Actually, they're not. The funny part is they're not. So,
I mean, they have their own credit line, don't they? Or is that
they have their own credit card?
They do, but it's through Goldman Sachs. It's through Goldman Sachs and MasterCard.
Balance that out.
Of course, Apple would go to the Golden Sack.
Yeah, but it's. I don't know.
It was a dumb joke. Don't laugh at that, John. It was not worth it.
That's why I'm laughing. Because of how dumb it was. Not lose money, you idiot.
Ignore it and move on.
Oh, get hit the damn desk.
But we'll see if this really affects them at all, or if this hurts anything in the future. But I don't think it will. It's not going to.
It's not going to affect them financially for sure. No. And the problem is that it's such a light slap on the wrist compared to how much money they have. Like, why the hell would they care otherwise?
Yeah.
And honestly, it's a slap in the face to consumers because, again, like, here's $25 for you spending an extra $900 on a device that you technically didn't need at the moment.
Yeah.
But here you go. Enjoy.
See, I've always had an issue with consumer protections, and of course, with this current presidency, they've been slashed deeper and deeper, pretty much at every turn, both to physical harm and monetary harm. This is why consumer protections are important because you don't get screwed by stupid things like this, and you don't need to buy a new phone every year. But that was their goal. They wanted you to buy a new phone every year. And I'm like, I would be spending more on my phones over the period I would own my car than I did my car.
Yep.
And that shouldn't be.
No.
It's a phone. Granted, it's a great, convenient device, but I still don't believe it's worth a car over the same amount of time.
This, to me, is a great example, John, you're right, of why we have consumer protections, because there are plenty of people out there who like to point out the fact that, hey, some people are just gullible and that they have to learn, so we shouldn't have to protect them. But here's a great example of, here's a piece of technology that a majority of people who use it does not understand how it works. Like, you could not explain to them how their battery operates in this thing, how the screen works, how the touch screen works, because they just can't really process that information.
Well, not only that, but Apple ran into issues where they were running into their finite resources that they build their phones with running out. And now they're like, we need a recycle program so we can take back some of these batteries and make other batteries with them that are still good, and chips and parts that they need, specific parts, probably like silver or gold, that they would be able to extract from it to put on their newer boards. And it's like, it's just their greed showing that in that respect was just ironic, but at the same time just shows how ugly like this entire process was.
Yeah, well, and also, again, why we need consumer protections. We need this level of, hey, you as a consumer shouldn't have to know the working mechanics of everything you purchase, because that's pretty much fucking impossible today. Right?
Well, it's also impossible for us to understand taxes, yet we're responsible for that too. But where we got to pay someone else to do it. And I'm like, but I shouldn't have to pay someone to pay taxes. Like,
we create a service, John. We're creating jobs by paying people for taxes. No, I mean, one battle at a time, okay? Consumer protections of the U.S. tax system. You get to pick.
We can talk about taxes next week.
Yeah.
I'd rather not. Oh, which, by the way, if you haven't paid your taxes this year, they're due tomorrow.
By the time they're going to be watching this,
you're late.
You're late. You're late.
You've already got a fine imposed.
Yeah. But please let us know what you think about what's happening over at Apple. Do you think they paid enough? Do you think that the consumer should get more than Samsung?
Yes.
I mean, at least $30.
Let me reiterate this appropriately. Yes.
Do they blow your speakers?
comments floating around John's headphones. It's what's actually making him sound a lot lighter. It's really difficult for him to speak. It's because your guys are just flying at the comment section, flying like a jet. Moving on to the next topic of the show. Handsome John, why don't you go ahead and take over since you wanted to hurry up and get to your topic?
I wasn't in a hurry, but I'm excited because this is something that we've had conversations with in the past, and we've actually talked about recently the price points of games going up to $70 a game, and this kind of helps tie that in and gives a little bit more understanding of what to expect from the upcoming consoles, and how important this will be determined on how you are as a gamer. But Xbox reportedly tells developers that next-gen upgrades should be free. And Xbox is all about, I want you to buy the game and be able to access it through all your platforms. Doesn't matter what platform you want to access it on, I want you to play games. Which, that sounds really good. But in reality, what it really means is that, I don't want you to have to not buy my console because you're worried about paying more for this game, the same game, but higher res. And also worried that if I buy the game too early and I won't buy it now because I'm waiting to buy the new console. And so there's a lot of mix and match of what people are expecting to see when it comes to buying their games for these Xbox and PlayStation consoles to, now with the current gen or later with the new gen. And with PlayStation not really having smart delivery, but a guaranteed 100 games to be confirmed for being compatible between the PS4 and PS5 is a good thing. But a lot of people are going to be left in the dirt with what your games you bought. And you should be able. There's no reason why you shouldn't be able to, but that's another discussion. But there are guaranteed games that are going to have free upgrades to PlayStation. Destiny 2, Cyberpunk 2077, Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Far Cry 6, and Marvel's Avengers. But you also have special cases where just because you buy the PS4 version or the Xbox Series X or the Xbox Gen X version, you don't get the free upgrade for a game like NBA 2K21. You have to buy the $100 Mamba edition in order to be able to have that upgrade from the previous gen to the new gen without spending the $60 and $70 price point.
And that's true for both consoles, right?
Yes.
For both.
Both
Xbox
between
and
Xbox. Both Xbox and PlayStation. You have to buy the Mamba edition to have the upgrade without spending the total $130 to have both, which is insane to me in a lot of ways, but actually not unexpected. There are people who are saying, I don't want to give the free upgrades because that involves more work, which a lot of people are also saying that we don't want you to up-res it. We just want to have access to it. We don't want a, Spelunky version, shining. I just want to play the game on my console as what it was and just have access to it.
We want to play a PS4 game on a PS5. I don't want the PS5 version of the game. I just want to be able to bring that game over.
Right.
Exactly. And so a lot of people, I could understand why you would feel almost cheated in that instance where, you have this $70 game from a $60 game on top of it. Where a lot of people, unlike us, where we spend massive amounts of our time in games and money, a lot of people have to pick and choose. And so going from a $60 to $70 price point in general, you have to come up with a reason to want to, I'm not going to buy this game twice. So I have to either wait for the new platform or I have to buy it now and get this upgraded type version for it later, or it comes with a free update, which a lot of these people want people to buy their game as soon as possible. So this free upgrade right now during this transitional period is super smart, but there's no guarantee that it's going to last and for how long and for how many games.
Water drinking.
Yeah, the cucumber accents the water in such a way.
You don't drink water on this show.
And for those of you who don't know, Mark just brought out a gallon jug to drink out of.
Thank you for telling our audio listeners.
I know that was super random for you. But this is also kind of important into how you want to look at the Xbox with smart delivery and PlayStation, which does not have smart delivery and has like a middle of the way kind of patch to get you through to the next generation. So when you're making your choices between Xbox and PlayStation, where you have Game Pass for Xbox, which, inevitably will have a lot of games on there, but not all of them. There's this huge juggling act that people are going to be making decisions on. Not to mention that if you buy a PS4 copy of, say, Watch Dogs Legions, and you want to play it on your PS5 with the free upgrade, well, if you don't buy the disc version of the PS5, you cannot get that free upgrade because you need the disc in order to get the free upgrade to the PS5 version. So if you didn't buy it digitally on PS4, you don't get the digital upgrade on PS5. If you have the disc, you have to have the disc in order to get that upgrade.
So if you have the disc, you have to make sure you keep the disc in order to upgrade. You can't sell that back or give it to a friend or something along those lines.
Yeah.
That disc will be used as a verification. Now, I don't think they've confirmed if it's verification every time you play or just when you make the upgrade yourself.
No, it's got to be in it in order for you to play.
Okay, so they're basically saying it. If you purchase the hard copy of Valhalla for PS4, if you want to play it on PS5 with this free upgrade, you have to keep the PS4 disc.
Yes.
Oof. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is a super weird space on a couple of reasons. One, Sony has officially stated that any game released from July 13th forward has to play on PS5. Mm-hmm. So at this point in time, any game that comes out now for PS4 will be available on your PS5 to play backwards compatibility wise. Yeah. You won't get the upgrade, but you'll be able to play your PS4
Which is fine. That's really what people are looking at. If you want to play an older game, you should keep your console for those specific reasons. Now, I'm sorry to say you're not going to get that much money back for it right now anyway.
Anyways, yeah.
But a lot of people do depend on that money in order to get the next console because of how they budget. So you kind of let go a lot more money than if you did buy a lot of games than you would have gotten for it.
I think the biggest problem people are going to have right now is just the market is saturated because of the fact that the console generation has lasted as long as it has. The price for a used PlayStation 4, I'll do the used PS4
$200 at best.
Exactly.
Selling for $400 right now.
So you can buy a used PS4, straight PlayStation 4, $89, $90. So,
what about the Pro? I mean, you're not going to really want to buy an old PS4. You're going to go Pro if you're going to have the old one.
About anywhere between $200, $250. Yeah. So,
and I mean, I'm not getting rid of my Pro. It's going to be my VR console at that point in time, and which is fine for me because of how avid I am. But for someone who's I could use that $200 to put towards the next console, which my prediction is going to be about $500. You would only be spending $300 on your console with the trade-in.
Yeah.
Now it also comes with this.
Well, it depends on where you sell it. Because if you sell this to somebody where you get the cash directly, sure. But the bigger issue is that
you're not getting that back from GameStop.
You're not getting anything.
You're maybe getting $7. It's the best they can do.
On eBay or something, you're probably not going to even reach that much simply because it's a competitive market space.
Well, there's no reason for you to pay the price that, I think right now, I'm wondering, you think I would imagine the PS4 Pro would drop to $300 when the PS5 comes out, minimum. Because it's being sold for $400 right now.
I mean, I would say that's a smart move, but will Sony do it? I don't know.
Well, I mean there's no reason. I mean, there is a reason. There is a market for people to want to buy PS4 Pros in the stance of the world, but the market's going to be pretty competitive where you're currently at for the newer console. No one's going to want that directly. So you getting third-party funds for that at max is going to be a lot lower in chance.
None of that helps me.
I mean, even
I tried to look up to see if I could find some information on what the price of the PS3 was when PS4 launched, and that's a very, very specific query that Google does not have the answer to right away.
Now, the interesting part is that Microsoft is also not mandated that these developers give the free update to their newer console. But there's no saying that they won't either, but I don't think they want to push away developers from their game to have to give away something. So they'll never actually demand it.
This is what I wanted to point out, is that I am in no way trying to slander Microsoft, Xbox, what they're doing, because I think they have been consumer friendly for the foreseeable, like for most of this generation. They're continuing to do so.
Let's not forget about the DRM, okay?
I mean, they have that. I'm not saying they're perfect, but I'm saying that
they're making up a lot of freaking runs from where they fell behind.
They're making up a lot, and it's through a consumer friendly approach. However, the big thing to notice here is that, what I would like consumers to look at is how many games are you getting on PlayStation that you cannot get this upgrade that are also on Xbox? Because again, Microsoft isn't mandating, they're strongly urging all developers. And what Sony has basically done is just said, devs, you do whatever the hell you want. And most devs are doing this because they know their consumers want it. Now, I'm not saying either one or the other is better. Microsoft definitely looks better for taking this approach. Yeah. But it's a very soft-balled approach of like, hey, you should do that. By the way, we told everyone they should do that. That's right.
I think it's also their way of telling people, like, you guys do not want to create this barrier right now because you will cut yourself off from selling more games. Do not be dumb. I'm recommending you do this. If you don't, I don't want to hear bitching, is pretty much what he's saying. Because he wants to sell his console. To be fair, he wants everybody to say, I have faith in Microsoft being able to have games for me to play that I have already bought. That's what he wants. And a lot of publishers want people to play their games.
He being Phil Spencer.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry. I forget who I talk to sometimes. I'm talking at you, but I'm really not talking at you.
So I think this is an interesting balance that Microsoft's kind of got to strike, which is why I think they went with the softball approach. Because if they tried to play hardball and tell all the developers, you have to do this, I think you're going to have a mass uproar of your developers that are just going to go, whatever, Sony's got better numbers anyway, we're going over there.
Oh, I know. And like we're just saying, hey, anything released after June 17th has to be compatible. This is not an if, and, or but. If you want it released on this console, that is what you are doing in order to be certified.
I think by playing softball, they get the PR benefit. Microsoft gets the PR benefit, but the developers are also like, I mean, realistically, we don't have to, and everyone who buys a next-gen console is going to want to rebuy the game anyway if they want to play it with updated graphics, so why don't we just continue doing everything the way that it's been done for generations now?
Well, and quite frankly, most third party that are straggling the line between the two of them anyways are going to want to make sure that their game continues on. Like where Odyssey, Assassin's Creed Odyssey made its money wasn't just in initial sales, but it was in the season pass, which cost $40 on the back end, which made the game a total of $100 to purchase.
Yeah.
So that's what they're looking for. So of course they're saying, you know what? In this middle ground, we'll arguably lose, $60, but regardless, we're getting your $60. We're going to make more sales in this because of the fact that we're saying, cool, you can just play it on whichever one you want.
And Assassin's Creed's known for their DLC, like being like with their gold package or whatever. I think it started with Syndicate is when they started doing that. And I was totally disappointed in Syndicate. But Odyssey, it turned out to be really good. So
Odyssey was as someone who loves the lore. It is. As someone who loves the lore of that world, John, I wish I could just fast forward you to the DLC because it is.
I would totally actually go there to do that. If you could get me to that point, I would play it from that point. Because I got Valhalla coming and we got Ghost of Tsushima coming. I got a trophy pick on the Last of Us here. So anyway, getting back to the point,
we can play it on Stadia.
You should go ahead and do that.
Poor Stadia.
What a waste of money.
I just find this very fascinating.
I give it crap, but it's just not my thing. I'm not saying it's bad.
Hey, don't worry. Sekiro will be on Stadia this fall. That's right. Almost a year and a half after it came out on all other platforms. Not a big deal. It's cool. Enjoy. Who the fuck wants to play a From Software game where there could possibly be lag? I'm going off my soapbox. It's fine. We don't need to talk about Stadia any longer. But
this is actually this current gen console war with developers and publishers is really what it comes down to is like the sports fans. For instance, if you're going to buy FIFA 2021, you don't want to get stuck with the older version and not be able to play with your friends when you buy the PS5. And they're trying to, incorporate everybody being happy with this transition because there's nothing worse than a pissed off gamer. they cause so much more problems than the happy ones do. So you're just like, we have to figure out how to make this work.
Just play one or two games online of Call of Duty. You'll see. Like,
oh my god,
I feel like I can think of a few things worse than a pissed off gamer. That's just me. Let's put that out there.
Not for those companies, but
not for those companies. Okay.
Yeah. Well, who else are we talking about?
Bankruptcy.
The cool part about all this, though, is with the $70 price point, this also comes into play because they want more money for higher res stuff, and other people are saying, I don't want to have to deal with, and a lot of people are even saying they're looking at 2K21, and they're like, it's not even worth the price of the PS5.
Yeah.
And here they're asking people to pay $100 to be able to have that increase, and I don't think that's entirely fair. I mean, if like you're going to have a subpar game come out that you're going to have people pay extra to have this PS5 upgrade, you better have a reason to do it, or people are going to flip out and not trust the process. And that's even worse than anything else that could possibly happen during a console transition.
There's nothing that speaks more tradition in gaming than getting there on day one, getting your console and playing a shit game, because that's what it's all about.
I mean, they're changing that. I mean, they're going to have this transitional period where you're going to have pretty cool games. You got Watch Dogs Legions, you got Assassin's Creed Valhalla, you've got first-party games that are going to be coming out on PlayStation that are going to be amazing. So
important to note, though, that both of those games, Ubisoft did say that the next generation version will be available later on. Mm-hmm. They did not say it'd be available at the launch of the systems. We can assume that would make the most sense. But there's also a possibility that you would have to wait in order to get that next generation feel of those games.
And that is very much possible. I mean, they didn't give a release date because I think they're trying to be vague because they don't want any slip-ups. They don't want anybody going, oh, I caught you. You said the Thanksgiving. You said
Says the studio that leaked Far Cry 6 before hours before their conference.
Oh, my gosh.
Oh, Ubisoft, what?
Dude, which, by the way, stoked for Far Cry 6. Oh, my God. That trailer fucking got my skin bumps. Oh my god! I was like, yeah, give it to me.
It got you all goose pimpled. All I'm saying is maybe focus on a couple of things within your company: sexual harassment and leaks.
Again, they are addressing these things. They're not addressing them during their forward, where people are like looking to talk about games, and all of a sudden they start talking about other stuff. They're like, I just want to know about the game. If you wasn't you complaining about it, if they did it, someone else would complain that they did it during the forward. So it is what it is.
I'd rather people complain about it during the forward than just complete cultural absence during.
It's not a cultural absence. They've talked about it. They've had multiple statements being put out and actions with those statements.
It felt very much like they were trying to sweep it under the rug to me.
They've literally fired executives and posted it.
I am not alone in that opinion. But I digress.
You're a digressor.
No.
You're a degreaser.
I am a degreaser. Wow. You just spill me all over that grease and I'll sop it up.
I'll break it down.
Let's just quit while we're behind. Let's just not.
No. What is super interesting about this is that this is the first generation where, without some sort of actual backwards compatibility plan, right? Without being able to physically play your PS2 games on the PS3, it looks like multiple people are looking at the best way to handle this. Ubisoft and other third-party companies are wanting to make sure that they can transition these games with their gamers to try and get as much money out of them as possible after the fact and enjoy their games. I'm not taking that out of it. I know these people love it when people clamor over their games, but realistically, they want to keep the money train flowing.
I just feel like it's a lost opportunity for PlayStation not to have the backwards compatibility between all of these consoles. Like, I feel like that's something that should be coming. I know you're teeing me
up, but I'm not done with my conversation, so we'll get there.
He's not ready yet. He's not ready yet.
But I also think it's interesting because of the fact that it really does speak further to Xbox and Sony in their differing opinions here. Mm-hmm. Where, according to Phil Spencer, like, he truly doesn't care if you go out and buy a Series X day one, or if you wait, or if you never purchase one.
As long as you play,
as long as you play Halo Infinite on whatever device you can. And while I think that is the long play, it makes sense. We've talked about it before. There's no way console generations can continue at the rate that they have, because eventually the technology is going to get to the point where it's kind of pointless to have an exclusive box when you can play wherever.
Let's get real.
PC's already getting there anyway.
Yeah.
Nintendo's been successful because they've been able to hold on to their IPs, control when they release them, how they're released, on what consoles, and they make even more money. Like, just for instance, Dr. Mario, for instance, like it was given away on the, well, not given away. It was available when you got the subscription.
Yeah.
But say, for instance, like, a game was released on Super Nintendo like that. And then you're like, well, I'm going to release it on the DS. And you know what? No, I'm going to release it on the Switch. And it's like, you just have a whole nother set of people with nostalgic factors also buying this game that you have already coded is just needed to be ported over. And you're making even more money on this same exact game. Whereas a lot of people are looking at Xbox saying, we want to make money on our games. And Xbox is like, we want it to be available on all the platforms. It's like, yeah, but we could have some people buying it on 2 platforms. We're missing out on a lot of people doubling down. And it's like, but that's not what we want. And PlayStation is saying, we don't care. We want you to buy it on both platforms. We just want you to be comfortable during the transition right now.
Yeah, what PlayStation has said is that we're just not going to hold back development on an exclusive game to hinder it to last generation's hardware. Like, they just don't care.
Well, newer games don't need to be backwards compatible, which is fine.
Right.
But the ones that have been, coded for PS4 should be able to be played. If I bought Spider-Man, that should be able to be played on the PS5, in my opinion.
I mean, it will be. We know that. They said the top 100 games. Now, I imagine but that list is growing.
They didn't number them and name them, so I'm not being, but they will.
That's fair. Yeah, I mean, Spider-Man is what they showed the PS5 off with. If they don't,
I was about to say. I mean, I would be very surprised if they didn't, but at the same time, I don't want to be that asshole.
So I feel like we're teetering quite a bit on the edge of my topic, so we're gonna roll into it. If you have any other specific comments you want to say about Xbox basically trying to ensure that all next-gen devs are allowing for these upgrades and don't charge for them, please let us know in the comments floating around my face like this beautiful red light.
Come at me, PC Master Race.
Okay.
You can play your Xbox games on your PC Master Race now. But the final topic of the show is a Sony patent which points to playing PS1, 2, and 3 games via the cloud. So this is not necessarily anything. The patent is new. The concept isn't, right? Where Sony is talking about basically having it so that you can play these games from a server that would run the emulation or software necessary, and even hardware actually is what they're discussing, right? So that you could emulate the PS1 on their server and have it streamed to your TV, much like Google Stadia. The promise of the future.
It's more like the promise of the past at this point.
They already have this with PlayStation Now, right?
For a degree, right? So on PlayStation Now, you can play PS2, PS4, and PS3 games. There are very specific PS2 games that have been re-released for the PS3 or the PS4. So it's not all of them. It's not an entire library.
So it's not even really an emulation at that point. It's literally a re-release of the game.
Correct.
For PS4 architecture. Okay, all right. Well.
Yeah. Whereas this would be an actual emulation using some combination of hardware and software on their servers so you could play them.
So I actually think this is a good idea.
Me too.
I mean, as much as I don't like the idea of game streaming, now that I've kind of tried it, I still think that on-prem hardware is still going to be sort of the reign supreme of this. But I like this idea just because in reality, there are fewer people that are going to be spending time on playing the old games that need to be adapted or need to be, emulated from PS1, PS2, PS3. You two probably being the two people that would fall into that sort of that what I would call outlier case, because the majority of people who buy PS5s are just going to play new PS5 games. So it makes sense for them to not have to chunk hardware or software time into actually implementing it into the PS5 itself and just turn around and just put it on the cloud.
And here's the other thing too, because that's a very valid argument. You also don't have to do this on PS5, technically. As long as you have a device that would run an application that could run run the stream, you should be fine. They already have PlayStation Now apps for your phones to stream. So it's just dialing it into it. And this is kind of what I was talking about that I hope to see from Sony coming into the PS5 is a larger, more robust ecosystem. Like, if you give me more of a reason to go to PlayStation Now for these kinds of things, I 100% will, especially because it's not contract-based. It's just monthly purchase-based, right?
Right.
So you can set up for an annual subscription and get charged every month, or you could just go in and spend your month It's $10 a month, which is what Game Pass is, and now you have access to these older libraries. Hell yeah, because whenever I'm feeling like, oh, it's a lull, not sure if I want that new game. Ghost of Tsushima seems pretty cool, but it might not be up my alley. I kind of want to just go back and play Dark Cloud from in PlayStation 2. Oh, I can do that, and I spend $10 this month. Yeah. That's what I've done.
You know how else you could have done that? Just taking the disc and putting it in your brand new console that should be able to emulate what you're doing.
Here's the problem, though. I don't own a copy of Dark Cloud, and to go and get a copy of Dark Cloud would be fucking a pain in the ass.
Well, what if you had it, though? That'd be great.
I mean, it'd be great if I had it, but a majority of people don't have it. Even people who are as...
You know how great it would be if I could get this PS5 and plug in this Mirror's Edge game that I freaking loved into it.
It would be great.
It would be
I'm
awesome.
right there with you.
I mean, the other benefit, like some of the benefits that come into play here is just the hardware itself. Like you don't have to implement your Blu-ray reader now for your disc to try to implement for, like older discs, like to be able to like, because technically PS1, PS2, and PS3, or actually PS1 and PS2 before the age of Blu-ray, technically they were Blu-ray discs to some extent. It was based on an old version, but it was
PS1 was CD, PS2 was DVD.
Yeah.
I thought PS1 was based on like an old
discs.
Much more primitive version of blue laser technology.
They're technically that's the case, but it dials it down to the fact that it was the conceptually it was a CD. So yes,
right.
you are correct on like how it handles the data and how it was read was very similar to Blu-ray, but overall like storage size is what we're really talking here.
No, 100%. That's what I mean though. It was much more primitive. It was still. It was still definitely like a blue laser. Like technically, Blu-ray is a CD type tech. It's just using a more precise laser. But I guess my thing is like implementing the hardware for PlayStation, PS1, PS2, and PS3 games to work there, and have the disc reader. By the way, that would mean you'd have to purchase the disc reading version or the disc version of the PS5 to be able to do that. Yeah. Well, I mean, then you've also got to have the ability to read back on those discs to be able to implement that. If you do a cloud version, you just make all the games available online, then you just say, I want to play this, and it's instantly available. You don't actually have to own it necessarily, or hope that disc isn't scratched up and destroyed. So
I just wish there was a way to utilize what you've already paid for just to play the same game. Not an upgraded version or anything else like that, just to play the game.
I mean, unfortunately, it does dial to what Mark's talking about. I mean, this is the same reason why Sony stopped putting backwards compatibility into PS3 is because it was literally burning out the Blu-ray disc readers because they were using a software trick to convince them that they were reading DVDs instead of Blu-rays. And it just kills the hardware overall.
It wouldn't be the first time that a company that used a peripheral CD reader in order on their console instead of carts. Like,
it's all about it's about
there. You could have made money doing that even.
Cost efficiency though. Do you really? I don't think they're making money off of that. They would appease you and I. They're not making money off of that.
No, not making money, but at least at the same time, like you're keeping your consumers happy. All I'm saying is you guys have not money. Give me what I want.
That's where this comes down in the middle, right? Is like you still have access to the games. They're available to you and on multiple devices. Theoretically. Now, obviously, we don't know. This is just a patent. I'm not saying here Sony is doing this for PlayStation 5. Nobody jumped to conclusions. That's very important to know. But, I mean, theoretically, you could have access to this on your PlayStation 4 or your PlayStation 5 or your mobile phone or your PC, all of which support this platform already. Why not just make it a more robust offering to convince consumers to want to use it?
I mean, imagine being able to play SNES games without having to purchase the SNES Classic.
I already have it, so.
But the point is, without having to purchase it, like that's the whole point. Is like you don't have to rely on the fact that you had the old cartridges or whether or not they work or not. You can just sign into an online service and suddenly you have access to everything.
Hey, Brett, how good did it feel when we took out your SNES and we started playing games on it?
It felt good.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. I liked it.
I agree.
I mean, again, I'm a fan. I'm not sitting here saying that I don't want my PlayStation 1 games to run on PS5, but I also think that's unreasonable to say, hey, Sony, remember that console you launched?
Xbox can do it. Why can't Sony? Are you telling me Sony's incapable?
So Xbox doesn't do it for every game. They do it for very specific games. You cannot take every Xbox original game and put it in Xbox One and it will run. There are 8 of them total for the original Xbox.
There's a reason why it's taken them this long to get Halo Infinite to the Master Chief Collection on PC.
Halo Infinite's not been released yet.
No. It was Halo 3 or
Halo
something
3.
like
Halo 3. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I had a nice, just long discussion with our own tumbleweed about that.
Infinite and 4 are Infinite ODST and 4 are still not available yet.
There's Reach.
I'm sorry.
Is what you're thinking.
Reach. I'm
Reach.
sorry. Yeah, Infinite's the next one. I'm sorry. I was getting it backwards.
But no, you're right. I mean,
they have to adapt them for the platform, or you have to build an entire emulation platform available for it.
Were you not listening to Mark Cerny when he gave us an hour-long lecture about the architecture? Come on, man. They either have to find some sort of software solution to trick the hardware, which in this case, in multiple cases, burns it up, or they put a hardware solution in, which means there's less room for anything else in the box.
You physically embed the previous generation in there, or previous generations in this case, plural.
Yeah. You're telling me that an emulator is going to take up too much room.
So if you're talking about the hardware perspective, yes, they literally have to take the guts of that hardware and find a way to shrink it down enough so that it could still be utilized by that system, but sit in that hardware. Right. So for like the PS3, it would be taking those 12 cell processors and finding a way to shrink it down and put it in there so it could run.
It was the PS3 that had the physical PS2 hardware on it, right?
Yeah, PS3 had a... So the PS3, what it did was it had... again, it didn't have the physical hardware. It used a software trick to trick the hardware into reading the discs like a PS2 disc, and that's what burnt up the hardware.
Yeah. Well, so which one was it? Because I remember Mark Cerny was talking about the one piece of hardware having a physical embedded implementation of the previous generation. Was it PS4 to the PS3?
No, it had to have been the PS3 then. Yeah, it would have to have been the PS3.
All right. Well, so regardless, the idea is that you have to have somebody there to re-engineer essentially the previous generation console to fit into a motherboard that has to fit all of the new hardware for the existing generation.
Then once again,
but then also you're relying on your consumers to pay for that.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Whether or not they use it.
Again, just make a peripheral and I'll buy it, and then I'll be able to play my games and be happy.
It'll be the PS2 Classic or the PS3 Classic, one or the other.
Yeah, there you go.
No one
or you
PS1.
can just have a selection of various devices like I do and just keep them on a shelf. No, I mean, I think the consumer-friendly approach is 100% what Microsoft is doing, and they're busting their balls to get it done. And they have done it over and over again, and I applaud them for it. The Game Pass library, how it works, how they've got it to operate on all these different devices and will continue to add devices is amazing to me. I mean, I truly believe that you will see Game Pass on your phone eventually where you are able to just play by syncing up an Xbox controller. This acts as a monitor and your processor that's streaming the game on there, and you're good to go. Like, there's no way they don't have that in their future because they're already on these consumer-friendly fronts. I think Sony's going by it from a different approach, isn't necessarily as consumer-friendly, but it's, I think, a smart approach for them. They bought all those Gaikai servers. Yeah. They're literally not doing much with them. Rather than hindering your hardware, which they've already invested quite a bit. I think we can all imagine here, their custom SSDs probably cost them quite a bit in research and development. So in that regard, here's a great way to give consumers what they're asking for without hindering your hardware. I think if they can pull this off, this is everything I wanted in PlayStation Now. Again, I don't need to be an annual subscription base. I can use it just how people are using Game Pass right now, which is, hey, I don't have a game to play right now. Here's $10 of my money. I'm going to play for a month and just dabble in the library. Yeah. Or, hey, that game was just added. I've never played it before. Like Control, which leaves in August, John. We only have so much time to play it. But it's in the library now, and I have thought long and hard about, hey, maybe I hold off on Ghost of Tsushima and pick up Control because so many people talk about that and what a great game it is.
It's funny because it's in my cart right now, and I was like debating it last night, just looking at it like, yes, oh yes.
Do it, John.
I know, I want to. But then I was like, we should just get the physical copy.
Oh my God, we can. Regardless, I think this is an interesting route to go because it falls into the same pitfalls that Stadia does, and we give Stadia a lot of on this show.
They can do it to themselves.
All those things will exist, but I do believe the one thing that is super smart about Sony here, PS1 and PS2 games, I don't care. You don't need 4K flash.
No.
So therefore, you're easily making those streaming speeds in order required to play that game much lower, right?
Yeah.
You don't nearly need the same level of fidelity.
Playing PS1 and PS2 games which didn't have 1080p quality, like you can very easily stream that to your phone over a cellular connection, no problem.
Yep.
Latency, of course, is still always going to be the big reigning factor there with any kind of game streaming service, but still, like the throughput, the game is always going to look exactly like it did whenever it released, if not a little bit better.
Yep. So I think that's super smart, and I'm hopeful this is what they're aiming for this ecosystem, because I would love this ability.
That they have to make it worth it, or otherwise it's not going to work. Because I have to tell you, the amount of people that want to play PS1 and PS2 games, though there are a few that there are serious people that love those games and would love to go back and play them, you being one of them. But I find myself finding it harder to go back to retro. We buy all these retro consoles, and I enjoy them for the time that I use them, or when you do go back to them, but I am always trying to catch up on the newer games, because you want to be in on the conversation. You want to be, you don't want to be spoiled on it, and it's so on and so forth.
But to be honest, I think that's the point. Like, so the easy thing for Sony here with cloud-based platforms now, if they design this technology correct, is they can literally just turn it all off.
Yep.
They can pay virtually nothing for it. If nobody's using it, they can pay virtually nothing for it. They didn't have to spend the engineering time to try to figure out how to embed it into a modern console. And then the people who don't use it don't have to worry about it. The people who want to use it can pay a little bit for it, and everyone sort of wins in this case.
It literally sits in a library. We're talking about games that are kilobytes. And I mean that very literally. Like they're so small, like they're not worth
impressive.
it.
I'm kind of curious now what the old PS1 disc size was.
So, like, when you're talking about this is no skin off their teeth, and if anything, they're bringing in people like you and myself of like, hey, by the way, or maybe more specifically me, because I'm such a nerd about that generation. I'm ready.
So actually, the original PlayStation 1 disc size carried 660 megabytes of storage capacity.
Holy shit.
Yeah. I'm actually kind of surprised. I mean... compared to some of the games I played on there, like GTA, or not GTA, Gran Turismo 2. Like, really?
That's super fascinating to me because Final Fantasy 7, 8, and 9 were on at least 3 discs, 9 and 8 being 4 discs.
Are you really surprised?
I'm a little surprised.
Really?
Well, I mean, because to me that actually sounds more impressive than what I was expecting. But anyways, okay. I do think that this is a win for them in general, because if they can pull this off, you've got suckers like me who have the excess income, and every now and then we'll get a nice, Saturday night drunk on and go, hey, I want to play Legend of Dragoon. And
yeah, sure, I'll pay a month subscription. Why not? Yeah.
You would really like this game. No, I won't.
Or when I get old enough, and I get to having kids, I can go, hey, this is what your dad grew up on, and show them
on the PlayStation.
You have
15.
to graduate. You have to play these games first, and then you get to play these ones, and then until you get to the new console. I have too. Believe it or not, I'm like, you're gonna start with SNES. Here's this. This is minimum. You have to beat every game to show me proficiency on this before we go to the N64.
Which is hilarious because I can't count how many. I don't think I've mastered a single game on the SNES. I don't think I've beaten one to its
that thought process only reminds me of like Back to the Future when the guys when he's playing the arcade game. They're like, "Oh, you have to use your hands? That's lame." I'm just like,
But please let us know what you think about this version of emulation for PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3 games going on to the PlayStation 5. Would you be considering this to be something you would purchase? Would you not care? Could you just want to move on from streaming in general?
And again, to clarify, this is just based on a very vague patent.
100%. 100%. This is not an actual feature. Sony has not announced this. I would have creamed my pants before the show if that were the case. Please
no one
let us
wants
know
to see that.
In the description floating directly in front of my face.
Below.
But now I think it's time for last call. Last call! That was really delayed, and I love every second of it. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. In case you have been living under a rock, in which go back under your rock. It's safe from COVID there. We are quarantined in our separate homes, away from one another. So we have our own special guests. I am sitting here drinking out of my wonderful Pokemon cup. Somebody scream of vodka tonic with rain vodka and Canadian Mist Diet Tonic, as well as some Basil Haddons that I'm sipping on.
Right Get your puny bottle out of here.
Ooh, sorry, excuse me. Size does matter. What are you drinking, Mark?
Oh, I'm actually drinking some Jameson cold brew.
Ooh,
I wonder why it was so dark.
Delicioso.
Yeah, it's actually pretty good. So I've had it before. I don't generally drink my coffee straight up, so this is a little bit different too, of having sort of that coffee taste or whatever without some kind of like cream or sugar mixed in with it. But I enjoy it just the same because it is still one of my favorite like whiskey flavor blends, I guess.
You should take the cold brew and mix in the Kahlua, and then you're good to go.
Yeah, there you go, man.
What about you, Handsome John?
I am drinking a Diet Coke. I'm just kidding. I'm drinking Jameson.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about. Of course, we have our shout-outs. You can join us on our Discord, where there's been plenty of conversation between all the game announcements, all these new games everyone's playing. Last of Us Part 2 discussion has been happening in various chat rooms, but trying to be spoiler-free, of course. Please feel free to join us. There's a link in the description. For our weekly reading, I have two really cool pieces, and they're both focused on Ghost of Tsushima, because that comes out on Friday, the same day as this episode. So one of them is a great piece from Silicon Era, where they actually go over the history of the invasion of Tsushima, which is what this is about, right? So the entire portion of this game is about the Mongols invading this island. It's right off the coast of Japan, or it's in between Japan and the Mongol-owned China at the time. And so this actually goes over the real history of it. Very fascinating. And then, of course, there's a wonderful piece from, of all places, Entertainment Weekly, about how the Ghost of Tsushima people at Sucker Punch worked with the estate of Akira Kurosawa to get the black and white film mode just right. So if you don't know who Akira Kurosawa is, he is a renowned Japanese director. He's created plenty of films, including Seven Samurai, really well known for that area of cinema, and they actually worked with his estate to ensure that whenever you went into this mode, it was similar to his film style, not just a simple black and white filter.
Interesting.
So I thought that was really cool. They're really cool. Short articles, but well worth reading. Of course, you have our new section of the show each week. We, of course, sit here and talk for at least an hour, if not longer. However, we wanted to try and cut out our largest topic of the show and give it to you guys in a more bite-sized chunk to chew on, spit out, do whatever you want with it. And we're calling that our top shelf section. So you'll find that on Wednesdays, because Mark is an amazing editor, and he records on Tuesday night and has it up by Wednesday afternoon. But that'll be on podcast services and YouTube for you to just enjoy our big topic. It also comes out before the show, so if you're excited, you can enjoy it and then watch the full show on Friday, our normal release, Friday afternoons. And then finally, we have our weekly deal. It looks like Humble has a summer adventure game bundle, and I brought this out specifically for you, John.
I know, I should have looked at it first, I'm sorry.
It includes a ton of Telltale games, including Season 1 of The Walking Dead, 400 Days, Batman Enemy Within from the Telltale series, Oxenfree. Oxenfree is a fantastic game if you've not played it. John, I know you haven't played it. You should play it.
No, that is one I didn't.
Wolf Among Us.
Oh, and,
so good. Walking Dead Season 2 and Michonne. So for a total of $15, you will get both seasons of Batman the Telltale series. You get all 4 seasons of The Walking Dead and the 2 DLCs. You also get access to Heaven's Vault, which is supposed to be really good, alongside the Wolf Among Us and Oxenfree. So $15. Of course, you get to pick a charity of your choice as well. You get all these games available to you on PC. I highly recommend it. It's well worth diving into. If you've not played any of these games and you enjoy narrative in general, highly recommend Wolf Among Us, Walking Dead Season 1, Batman Season 1.
Oh, yeah.
Hands down.
So good. All of them.
But now it's on to our question of the week. And our question of the week is very simple. What kind of nerdy ass science do you enjoy hearing about?
Boob physics in games.
That's not the answer I was looking for. Not even a little bit. That was really proud of you for getting there. But yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think I'm going to go first because I don't know if I can count that as first.
No, we can't.
I'm just going to put that out there. I'm going to say paleontology, right? Yeah. So as a child, I grew up quite a bit loving dinosaurs. That's not really a secret on the show. I talk about dinosaurs enough that it should be pretty obvious. But recently, it was discussing last episode before we recorded how I've transformed my Twitter timeline in a way that I never thought possible. I started following RJ Palmer, who is the artist who does the realistic Pokemon, who helped come up with concept art for the Pikachu detective movie. He follows a bunch of paleo artists who in turn follow a bunch of paleontologists. So I now get on my timeline a nice mix of video game news, video game opinion, political news, political opinion, and now paleo art and paleo news and paleo opinion. And I could not be happier.
Now you know he's a total nerd.
100%. There is an alternate world where I did not meet my wife at the time that I did, and went to college for paleontology instead of computer science.
Interesting.
And Brent would be in Montana somewhere,
still walking around like a velociraptor. He really would be, but I am the velociraptor.
And with enough mushrooms, you better believe it.
He out in the middle of Montana shroom tripping. I'm a velociraptor. Yeah, I'm a velociraptor.
See, I would really hope that I'm actually just like jumping back and forth between portraying the Velociraptor and then Dr. Alan Grant from Jurassic Park, where you just have that. It's like they attack you here, or here, right across the belly, spilling your intestines, and then I just jump back to the Velociraptor.
that would be the most. That would be the most interesting Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde book I would ever read. 100%.
100%.
Is he a dinosaur or is he human?
What about you guys?
My nerdy science love usually stems from chemistry and biology. I went to school for psychology and biology, but I always liked blowing things up. And chemistry is the best way to figure out how to do that. Or burn it. Really good at those things. And in learning about those things, I actually learned a lot about the processes of, life, organisms, and, you have natural ways of things decaying to forcing it to use acids or a compound. It's to me, that's always been like fun to watch, especially like when it comes to like guns and stuff like that, where you can add magnesium to bullets and make dragon's breath. And it's just like, oh man, little things are so cool. But, it's when it comes to science, like I like science in general, and your question's a little misleading, to be fair. What kind of nerdy science? Explain to me what science isn't nerdy, Brent. I mean, come on now.
I would say the general, like, hey, you could plant a seed in a bag with paper towels that are wet is not nearly as nerdy as, hey, we have a discovery on the Spinosaur that points out that its tail was like a rudder and it's basically a giant crocodile. Let us go through our slideshow. That's nerdy fucking science, okay?
That's like just being specialized. I mean, that's like saying, oh, there's, organisms in the body. Well, this was actually the flagella of the bacteria, but it's like...
I'm not going to sit here and let you judge my nerdy science, okay?
I'm not. I'm just letting you know that I had a hard time with this question. But that's why I went with boob physics, and that's my favorite.
Physics is the type of science, I guess,
John's a heterosexual man. What about you there, dispatcher?
I mean, what kind of nerdy science am I not into here? To be fair, I'm not. I'm not into paleontology. I guess
you
that's
son of a.
You're the only one, Brett. We like Jurassic Park. That's as far as we go.
No, I mean,
John Williams' score is just so good.
The funny part is, like, I was just showcasing this at the beginning here because it's. I need to go ahead and plug this in or whatever, but. I started tinkering around, like electrical engineering and software development's always been sort of my thing, which is, where, like, to me, I built a Node MCU, programmed it so that it just triggers a flashing LED at this point, which is just sort of my step one. My step two is to get this connected to a Wi-Fi network and control addressable LEDs inside my computer case to do weird patterns and all kinds of stuff. Like this.
Step 3 is to make it to an electronic lock for all his victims in the basement.
Figure out the pattern and you can get out.
I already have one of those. Don't worry about it. Need to have a basement first, I guess. But no, but
it's like Pizzagate all over again. It was all a lie.
Making this like a sexual puzzle where he can't stop the stimulation until he figures out the code.
No, but I mean, software development, electrical engineering, that kind of thing's always been my thing, and it's showed up in different aspects. You know, like I want to do home automation stuff with electrical engineering with, like dedicated boards to be able to connect to Wi-Fi and control lights or control sound or do whatever. You know, in production, I'm all about trying to make sure that I have the most optimal connectivity between the type of connections or controlling lighting and sound and making sure that all the technical details are correct based on the amount of power you need or whatever. You know, and to me, the software side of things has always been the most interesting piece because it's the most flexible, it's the most creative in a technical fashion, which is kind of where, you know, this stuff comes into play. It's software tied with hardware almost directly. So the nerdiest science that I enjoy hearing about is definitely electrical or software engineering.
Okay. We'd be lost without you.
Poorly lit is what I would say. I don't know about lost. I'm just kidding.
We would be a match.
This would be a
Slowly
gaming
burning to my
podcast, not a
fingertips.
gaming and tech podcast.
Covered in gasoline.
Please let us know which nerdy science you enjoy, you indulge in. You know, don't be ashamed. Share with us in the description, floating above Mark like an angry eagle.
Below.
For you herpetologists. I know herpetology is about snakes. It's fine. Don't worry about it. Thank you again and cheers.
Not what I was thought. Okay,
until our next episode.
Cheers.